So I just wanted to welcome Dr. Moore back to the center. He gave a wonderful series of teachings for us earlier in the year, and he'll be returning again in August. So we're grateful that he's accepted to teach for us again this month on Saturdays, and then again in August. So thank you so much for accepting our invitations and being a part of our community. We're really grateful to have your expertise with our students. Thank you so much.
It's delightful to be back here again, and for the first session, which is really going to be an invitation to this extraordinary book by Kabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche, The Heart of the Path. And so we're going to have many different opportunities to discuss and explore this book together. And I thought really to make it an invitation to open out our minds to the various questions revolving around the sometimes fraught issue of guru devotion, particularly when viewed from a Western perspective. So I want to actually raise some of those issues and also tackle them, because they can act as blockages to entering into a very meaningful relationship with our teacher. So part of this project involves openness and honesty, and we're not to be afraid of raising doubts and quandaries. So for reasons of auspiciousness, I thought we would begin with a meditation, which will also function as our motivation, so preparing the scene for the sessions together. And the other advantage of presenting this meditation, which is a quintessential guru yoga drawn from the famous collection of Lojong or mind training texts, so it's an absolutely classical presentation, is that it involves the key ingredients of guru yoga as a powerful meditational practice. And so this will also provide a basis for our discussion going forward. So I'd like us to relax our bodies. So as I mentioned, this is going to be very much a meditation. So we'll adopt our meditation postures. Centering the mind. Just becoming aware of the breath for a few cycles. And now just evacuating any cluttered thoughts, just letting these dissolve with the out-breath, and inhaling in their place, clear, radiant, open mind. Now, this quintessential instruction begins with a homage to the teachers. And it says, in general, reliance upon a spiritual teacher is critical. The qualification of the spiritual teacher and the proper manner of relating to him have been extensively stated in all the teachings of the great and lesser vehicle. The array of trees sutra states, quote, without holding the paddles, the boat cannot cross to the other shore. Even if all other conditions are present, without a teacher's presence, the end is not reached. As for the teacher's qualifications, if he possesses the lineage and the realizations, he is qualified. So the instruction here points out that we must rely on someone who is in a sacred lineage, such as that of the master Atisha, one who possesses a transmission unbroken from the fully enlightened Buddha, and who holds a firm conviction in the awakening mind. These two aspects of lineage and firm conviction in the awakening mind are two aspects to such a manner of reliance. First is reliance by means of actual practice, which is to put the teachings into application through all the three doors, just as they are found in the teacher's words. Secondly, is a secret reliance by means of symbols, which refers to visualizing the teacher at your heart or at your crown and making supplications with admiration and reverence. So before we establish the visualization, I'll ask us to prepare our mind by cultivating loving kindness, compassion, and the awakening mind. Now, visualize your teacher at the crown. One teacher you admire most, seated on a cushion of lotus and moon. Regardless of actual size, imagine him at this moment the size of a thumb. Recall everything about him. I'm using the male pronoun here. Of course, we can adapt this to our own purposes and needs. Recall everything about him. His face, his sitting posture, the cadence of his voice, his aspirations, and so on. So bring this visualization to life through detail. Imagine that in reality, he is inseparable from all the teachers from whom you have received instructions, the lineage of which go back to Shakyamuni Buddha himself, as well as from meditational deities and from all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Now, from the depths of our heart, we offer whatever offerings we can afford. And the most precious of which is the offering of our own practice. We're offering our minds to become serviceable, transformed through the blessings of the Guru in order to accomplish the Bodhisattva path to full enlightenment for the benefit of others. This is the greatest offering we can make to our teacher. Nothing pleases the Buddhas more than this seed of the awakening mind being generated. And with palms folded, then to the utmost of our capacity, we seek refuge in the exalted body, speech and mind of the teacher whom we're visualizing. Contemplate, although free of faults and perfect in all enlightened qualities, like space, he is devoid of any ultimate intrinsic existence. He appears for the benefit of all beings, including me. So again, from the depths of our heart, we make the following supplication. O most precious spiritual guide, my teacher, bless me so that the two awakening minds, just as they are found in our heart and in the hearts of those in your lineage, just as found in the minds of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, who are the core expression of the definitive scriptures, arise in me this very instant. Bless me so that the awakening mind remains manifest in me throughout all times. Times of prosperity, misfortune, success, failure, happiness, sadness, at times of sickness, death, transition, and birth. Bless me so that I will know how to take all adverse conditions and obstacles as factors complementary to this mind training practice. And we make this supplication 3 times. Bless me so that I'll know how to take all adverse conditions and obstacles as factors complementary to this mind training practice. Bless me so that I'll know how to take all adverse conditions and obstacles as factors complementary to this mind training practice. Now, while maintaining very stable meditative equipoise, you should imagine that your crown aperture has opened. And from the visualization of the Guru on our crown emerges like a shooting star, a luminous image of our precious teacher, which then comes down and enters into our heart. Recognizing this to actually be the teacher and a Buddha, cultivate faith and respect to the best of your ability. Then let your mind rest, and as the teacher's body, speech and mind dissolve into your body, speech and mind, imagine that your body, speech and mind assume the nature of clear light and space. and then rest your mind in this for as long as possible. So we'll do this meditation for a few moments. Next, at the conclusion of this phase of the meditation, visualize your body and your teacher at your heart as before, feeling that the teacher resides in this space, in this place, or alternatively, that he dissolves into your crown or departs to his natural abode. You should dedicate all your virtues of the 3 times towards the goal of fulfilling your teacher's aspirations and towards the birth of this spiritual practice within us, and make aspirational prayers to this end. So that's the basic structure of that very, very special quintessential presentation. And I call it quintessential because it shears away any of the kind of the details that might otherwise get in the way of our clear understanding of what it is that we're doing. And I think it can help here to consider the meaning of refuge as well, because when we go for refuge and we pay respect, obeisance to the refuge objects, it's explained in the lineage that we're also paying respect to our own future enlightenment. So this is, the fulfillment of our continuum, if you like. And so it's not something abstract and divorced from us at all. So in the same way, if we can really experience the significance of Guru Yoga, we enter increasingly subtle levels of identification with the teacher at intensifying subtle levels of the mind. And so it can be useful to think here of the 3 levels, if you like, of the guru. And I'll just touch on this at this point, just to frame the point. We can refer to the guru who's the object out there in the world as the external guru. The internalized guru, the one that we're carrying in terms of an intimate personal relationship at the level of our experience, which is equivalent to that guru visualized in the heart, we call the inner guru. And then we have the secret guru, who is referring to the mind of Dharmakaya itself, which is the completely fulfilled mind of enlightenment, which has removed all obscurations and obstructions and achieved every positive goal. So at this level of the secret guru, when we have achieved the same realizations, there'll be no distinction, if you like, in terms of quality between our own mind and that of the mind of the guru, whom we're currently paying respect towards in our practice. And so this isn't an intellectual or an artificial point. It's a definite that our mind will be, it won't be that Buddha's mind, but it will be a mind qualified with exactly the same set of qualifications as a perfectly realized Buddha. And so this is incredibly inspirational because it points to the fulfillment of our own potential in this vast, extraordinary way but it does this on the basis of a foundation in our actual current situation. And so I'd like to propose at the very beginning that seeing the Guru as the Buddha, seeing the Guru as the heart of the path, is exactly the means of bringing what might initially appear to be two discordant states, unenlightened states and enlightened states, into one through a cohesive evolutionary pathway of practice, which is completely lucid and clear and able to be understood in many, many interesting and rich ways as we proceed. So I just want to mention here before continuing that this visualization of the Guru on the crown in a single form is referred to in the lam-rim tradition as the all combined into one jewel. And it means that we have an option in our practice of, rather than visualizing a huge panoptical encyclopedic display of all the refuge objects and all the objects of the field of merit, the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, gurus, deities, heroes and heroines, bodhisattvas and so forth, which is a vast undertaking, we crystallize it into this single entity of the Buddha, visualized as our Guru. And this way of visualizing the Guru in Guru Yoga is said to have a very, very particular force in terms of enabling us to generate merit and to undergo purification. And we'll know, for those of us who are doing 6-session yoga on a daily basis, we also do that practice in relation to the all combined into one jewel. And in that case, we see the Guru in the form of Vajradhara as the quintessence of the entire field of merit. So it's said to be not only very simple, but very effective. And it's also accessible to us. So just for to get your bearings, this tradition is also presented in the lam-rim, and particularly famously in the Easy Path by the Panchen Lama. And Losang Churki Geltsen, who's also the author, as we know, of Lama Zopa in our tradition, is a quintessential source of the oral lineages, which our own precious teachers, such as Lama Zopa Rinpoche and His Holiness, the Dalai Lama and so forth, are also practicing. And we'll also note that this same crystallization of the Guru into one jewel is found in Ganden Lagama, the Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga. And in that case, we visualize Lama Tsongkhapa on our crown, and we visualize Vajradhara in his heart, and we visualize the seed syllable Hung inside the heart chakra of Vajradhara. And so this is referred to as the three stacked beings. And it has a very, very profound significance in terms of our yogic practice. So even for reasons of auspiciousness, if we're not practicing Tantra, to be able to visualize the Guru in this way is setting very powerful seeds for these practices to be accomplished at a later date. So when Geshe Dogal was giving his commentary on Guru Yoga, he said that he carries the Guru on his crown at all times. And at night time, he'll bring the visualization down into the heart and absorb into the clear light of sleep and so forth. And then, of course, a yogi can perform other practices at that point, but it's a very, very special way of going to sleep. And then, of course, reversing that process in the mornings as we awake as well. And one of the points that Geshe Doga made, and I've always found this very, very pertinent, is that if we do visualize the guru in that position, it enables us to have a kind of perspective, if you like, on the nature of our activities that are unfolding in terms of body, speech, and mind, what we're actually performing. And so, for example, if we're about to generate the mind of anger, because the conditions for our afflicted mind are in place, someone's insulted us, we're upset, just by recollecting the guru on our crown, we're suddenly creating an entirely different way of perceiving that situation, because the enormity and grotesque deformity, if you like, of that afflicted mind of anger that's getting up and away is cast into acute, vivid relief by the fact that we're witnessing it through the eyes of our guru on the crown. So you can see here how incredibly powerful it is. But this is just looking at the downside in terms of an affliction arising. But of course, exactly the same situation is the case if we're about to generate a kind thought. How wonderful to generate a single kind thought. How remarkable that is. Just consider what's happening in the Ukraine at the moment. War's not possible if people aren't generating unkind thoughts, is it? Or impervious thought, in the sense that we don't care who our victim is, we kill them anyway. And so by thinking our guru is present as we're generating that kind thought, we can then muster an even greater dimension to that thought so that it radiates and is applied to all beings without exception, both now and in the future. So you can see here that guru yoga becomes a dynamic, a psychological dynamic of incredible potency that can be employed in each and every situation as it arises. So Geshe Doga said, personally, I find that making fervent requests and visualizing Shakyamuni Buddha as combining all dual refuges is very effective for my mind. Somehow making strong requests with the understanding that you are the source of all goodness, the manifestation of all the other deities, and thus I have no other refuge than you, along with visualizing in the guru in the aspect of Guru Shakyamuni or Lama Tsongkhapa, makes a stronger impact on my mind. If one has strong faith in the guru in that aspect, it really seems to help to shift one's mind, making it much more receptive to the blessings. It provides an impetus to engage in further practices. So in the context of the easy path, this teaching is taught as a quintessential part of the unique Ganden oral tradition. And I mention that because it incorporates a very, very special way of developing a unique, special bodhicitta. And it includes a verse, which is one that we'll recognize immediately as one that our own teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, frequently quotes. In particular, I must at all costs quickly attain the precious state of a completely perfect Buddha for the sake of all mother sentient beings. In order to do that, I'll dedicate on the instructions on the stages of the path to enlightenment through the profound path of Guru Deity Yoga. So in his commentary, Gume Khensa Lobsang Jampa points out that there are a number of interpretations of quickly here. And the first is that the first quickly refers to tantric practices in general, which is a faster path than relying only on the vehicle of the perfections. And the second quickly, according to this tradition, refers to how we can obtain enlightenment in one brief lifetime of this degenerate era by relying on highest yoga tantra. However, there's another interpretation of quickly, which comes from Goa and Sapa, who attained full enlightenment in one lifetime, and who was the previous incarnation of the Panchen Lama who wrote the Easy Path. In Goa and Sapa's interpretation, the first quickly refers to practicing the stages of the path tradition, the lam-rim, and the second refers to taking guru yoga as the very life of your practice. So I'll just quote from Gume Khensa Losang Jumpa here. He says, in general, tantric practitioners take guru yoga as their main practice, but here, Goa and Sapa refers to something unique to the Ganden oral tradition, which is taking guru yoga as the life of your practice. Taking guru yoga as your primary practice is not the same as taking it as the life of the practice. The Panchen Lama is revealing something very profound. So when we meditate on the lam-rim, and this is an instruction again that Kabje Zopa Rinpoche will so frequently give, if we do it on the basis of guru yoga, in the way that I've described, it just, we can visualize the guru on the crown of our head and then soften our mind and then prepare our motivation and so forth, and then supplicate the guru for the session ahead on the lam-rim, say we're meditating on death and impermanence, and then we perform the analytical phase of the meditation, and we bring the guru down into our heart to embed the realization of death and impermanence, which is the lam-rim realization at the level of our experience, and we sit with that non-conceptually for some time, and then arise from that. Maybe we go on to do the next meditation, or we go and make a cup of tea, or whatever it is we're doing. But you can see here how we're incorporating the guru yoga as the very lens through which we're performing the entirety of the practice. So this is what's meant here, that we're taking the guru yoga as the life of the path. It's the living aspect of our practice, very, very profoundly. So I think this is a good point now to step into the introduction to the book itself. And the first chapter is very significantly called, Why Do We Need a Guru? So Lama Zopa Rinpoche indicates in his commentary in that chapter that this is why we need a guru is in fact the first outline in the lam-rim under the topic of relying upon a spiritual guide. So that first point is the advantages of relying on a spiritual guide. So I just want to mention here that in order to navigate the sessions ahead, we've only got a few sessions, but the Venerable Ailsa Cameron, who so splendidly compiled and edited this book of Rinpoche's teachings, points out very, very clearly in her introduction that the structure of this book basically mirrors the structure of the presentation of Guru Yoga or Guru Devotion as presented by Pabonka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. So this is very, very useful to know, because it means that we can read these two texts in tandem. They perfectly dovetail. Every now and again we'll find points of emphasis, particularly in Lama Zopa Rinpoche's presentation, where he'll expand a single point of a reflection for many, many pages, and in an incredibly inspirational way. And this is because Rinpoche is driving the impact forward, what it is that we're meant to be drawing from these outlines. And so I just want to mention this topic of outlines. It seems to be sometimes almost a pedantic aspect of the Tibetan tradition, but that is a misunderstanding. I've used the word pedantic very carefully, because firstly, it's a memory device. It enables us to structure an elaborately complex teaching into a series of topics. But more important, particularly in this case, it mirrors the psychological evolution of the process of acquiring the realizations. And so if we follow the sequence, it will be perfectly adapted to the growth of our mind towards realization. So this is why we ask this very basic question at the outset: why do I need a guru? What a fantastic question. And there'll be some who will say, well, I don't need a guru at all. Thanks very much. I'm perfectly self-sufficient. I'm well-educated. I've got a wonderful library of books. I'm intelligent. I've got good friends. I'm able to chart my own pathway perfectly well on my own. Thank you very much. So this is one claim. Other people will say, well, look, I need many gurus. One guru's not enough for me. I have this one, I have this one, I have this one, and if you come along, I'll embrace you as well. And so these individuals, we might say, collect gurus. And there are others who are confused and find the whole issue of guru devotion, particularly as expressed so forcefully in the Tibetan tradition, as intimidating and bewildering. And it can even invoke fears of cultic absorption, in the sense that we're going to somehow be asked to give up our autonomy and lose control over our destiny. So these are all real thoughts, because the world we live in is a very complex place, and we are surrounded by many who set themselves up as gurus, don't they? They call themselves gurus. And we need to know what we're doing. So the Venerable Ailsa maps out in chapter by chapter detail the content of each of the chapters, and that's very, very useful indeed. And so the first one is why guru devotion is seen as the root of the path. So on page 5, Lama Zopa Rinpoche asks this very question. I quote, "In order to do the practice of guru devotion, we first have to be very clear in our mind why the practice is so important. Why do we need a guru? We might think achieving liberation and enlightenment is fine, but why do I need a guru to do it? As long as there are books on the subject available, I can read them and practice. So why do I need a guru? So perhaps we've asked ourselves this very question. And I'm going to take a side step now, but I think it's a very useful one. I'm going to be referring to the chapter on guru devotion in Rob Priest's book, The Wisdom of Imperfection. Now, Rob Priest, for those of us who don't know, was a early student of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and went into extensive retreats very early on in the early 80s under the guidance of very, very highly realized meditational masters. And then in his later life, went on to become a Jungian therapist, counselor. And so this book is an attempt, a very good attempt, to draw together his understanding of some of the psychological ramifications of a poorly or inadequately processed notion of guru devotion. And he alerts us to some particular dangers that can arise if we're not thinking clearly about these matters. So firstly, he points out that since the 1960s, I quote, interest in Eastern religions and spiritual guides has grown rapidly in the West. In part, this has been a response to the apparent absence of genuine examples of spiritual evolution. It has also been a reflection of a growing disillusionment with established approaches to theistic spirituality, where there is often an absence of a practical path to self-actualization or self-transformation. The result has been a dramatic increase in the number of Western followers of Eastern spiritual traditions, particularly Buddhism. So this very interest based on a kind of questing or even a thirst can open up into some very awkward terrain. Priest says, while the teacher-disciple relationship can be an invaluable and fruitful experience, the process of relating to spiritual teachers also has its hazards. This is in part the result of naivety amongst Westerners as to the nature of the guru-teacher, teacher-student or guru-disciple relationship. It is also partly the consequence of a lack of understanding on the part of Eastern teachers as to the nature of the Western psychological makeup. And added to this is the apparent tendency of a few Eastern teachers to actually exploit the relationship. With the advent of a growing number of Western teachers, so shifting now to Western teachers of Buddhism, it is becoming necessary to really address the underlying psychological and ethical basis for this relationship. Too often, there are potential abuses of this relationship, particularly confusion around boundaries. So Priest proposes that we are particularly sensitive and even vulnerable to boundary violations because we lack a historical anchorage of spiritual guru traditions that have pervaded the Buddhist world for millennia. So this is a really, really important point, isn't it? How do we transmit or transpose these time-honored traditions of teacher-disciple relationships, which are so deeply understood and respected in their traditional cultures, to a world such as the one we live in, Australia or America, where there's incredible thrust or impulse or demand towards self-actualization, self-individuation, self-accomplishment through dint of our own process, our own effort, our own will. Why should we give up our will to another party? These are really, really interesting things to consider. So Priest says the long cultural familiarity with the guru has meant there is often a greater ease with the relationship. And he looks at it across all the various Buddhist traditions. So here we're then needing to ask ourselves, how can we avoid a kind of a careless or indiscriminate embrace of a teacher as a Westerner approaching Tibetan Buddhism in this case, with its incredibly strong emphasis on Guru Yoga. So, as Rinpoche points out at the end of his first chapter, Lama Tsongkhapa swings the topic of Guru devotion to the very beginning of his presentation of the lam-rim. Even before we begin to look at the precious human rebirth, we're taking on board that relationship as the crucial one. And so in the tantric presentation, this relationship with the guru is pushed even to a more profound and subtle level. And the guru is seen as the source, inspirational, direct source of our realizations. So without Guru Yoga, in the case of Tantra, it said there'll be no realizations or insight arising. So how can we be skillful in our approach? Is the Guru so crucial, or are we simply seeing the dogma of religious orthodoxy at play? What is the value of the teacher-disciple relationship? Furthermore, how can Westerners make sense of this relationship when there is so much room for confusion? So I want to mention here, I've raised more questions than answers, but Priest makes a very, very important point in his presentation. And by the way, he has his own gurus. He's deeply dedicated to his teachers and to his Buddhist practice. So he's in no way repudiated that relationship. He's just simply pointing out the need to be very, very clear as we approach it. And he says that one of the problems people have as they approach this topic of guru devotion is that in a kind of excess of joyous appetite, we consume the guru in total without thinking. And we don't do any preliminary work. And so it's going to be quite clear when we study this topic that within the tradition itself is enshrined the need to first examine our teacher before accepting them as our guru. And so this examination is something we can look at again, but it's not an examination in a kind of a harsh, strict sense. It means, is the guru manifesting the very qualities that they are espousing in their teachings? If they're not, which means there's a discordance between the two, then something is astray. And if we then swallow that guru whole by entering a very deep relationship with them, we court a danger, a very obvious danger of ourselves not acting appropriately, even ethically in certain situations. So it said that even Atisha, the great realized Atisha, checked his bodhicitta guru for an extensive period of time before formally approaching his teacher for teachings. I think another basic point that Priest makes, which I thought to highlight at the beginning, is that he also says that we can't simply assume that the moment we take a guru on board, that all of our problems will be dispelled. And he says that this is a great trap for the Westerner, because often what we're actually looking for is a substitute parent to heal damage or perceived damage from our childhoods. And so maybe we've had estranged parents, etc., and we've had some sort of emotional retardation as a consequence. And we suddenly think that if we take on this teacher, all of our hurts will be dissolved and will disappear. We'll be transformed miraculously. And so this kind of hyperventilating expectation is involves a projection of our own ego needs onto the object of the teacher. This is can be talked about through mechanisms of transference and so forth. We actually see the guru as holding all the secrets and all the answers to our personal psychological afflictions. And as a consequence, we avoid, and often in important ways can even delay working, doing necessary work on ourselves. So I just mention these at the outset because they're very important issues. In other words, Priest says that before we can really establish a healthy relationship with our teacher, we must have taken responsibility for looking after our self, our ordinary self. So I feel this is a very important point because sometimes I hear my Buddhist friends say, when someone's depressed, for example, and they say, well, do more purification or make prayers to your teacher to make the depression go away. And that person attempts to do that, but finds that, for example, the depression is still there. And so this precipitates a kind of crisis of belief that has the potential to estrange or even impair that student's relationship with their teacher for the sole reason that they've somehow misplaced the burden of working on themselves through extrapolating their needs onto the teacher and then addressing it back to them rather than taking it on board that they need to do some work untangling their neuroses, their problems. And so we see stories of, we hear this ourselves, students going up to the teacher and said, I've met a really nice person. Should I get married? For example, these aren't abstract examples. People ask our teachers the most extraordinary questions about how to manage their everyday lives. And so within the traditional cultures of Buddhism, this kind of running up to the guru to answer these personal questions is quite alien. It's not part of the cultural setting of the guru. So there's a kind of need here to identify what it is that we're we're doing. So another aspect of this problem comes in because students sometimes think, oh, well, I'm empty of existing from my own side. The self is just a kind of hallucination. And if I realize emptiness, it will disappear. But this is, again, a misunderstanding because the relative self that functions does exist relatively and needs to be worked at on that relative level. And so for that depressed person that I mentioned before, perhaps having access to some form of psychological support within the milieu of our own culture would be entirely beneficial, entirely useful, and will enable that student to ground themselves sufficiently to then be able to consider the possibility of entering a spiritual relationship with their teacher. So another way of looking at this is to think that the relationship with the teacher in terms of the guru is that we're seeking the guru's support to accomplish the vast task of traveling the path to enlightenment on behalf of other beings. And this project is vast and incredibly significant. And our guru will be invaluable in guiding us on this path. But that little relative portion of ourselves, the little muddled up self that's come out of a particular family background and has certain egotistical needs and cravings and desires and so forth, is in the bigger picture to be not put away, not repudiated, but kind of de-emphasized, because we're not trying to become a fully integrated self in worldly terms. We're trying to transform ourselves in extraordinary ways while traveling the path to enlightenment. And in order to do this, we need to have a soft and flexible ego, if you like, one that's able to adapt and change in healthy ways. And this might require therapeutic support and so forth. So you can see here that it's not contradictory to talk about Western psychological needs and structures and the importance of guru devotion in the same breath. We can talk about them together as long as we're clear. So I might throw this open now to questions, because it really raises some maybe provocative issues and points. So would anyone like to contribute some thoughts?
Well, Dani's saying a few things in chat.
Yeah,
Dani, why don't you go ahead and share?
Thank you,
I
Dani.
will. I was going to do that. Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
It could
Yes,
be better.
I can. A little bit
can
soft.
yell. Okay, so I used to attend the meditation. I'm from Berkeley, California, and there's a lot of those needy people there that have the guru followers, collectors. I knew plenty of them. I used to go to this meditation group by this neurobiologist guy named Rick Hansen. He wrote a book called Guru's Brain and some other stuff, and he's really popular. But you should see the stampede up to him. I didn't envy him at all, but that's all I have to say. My teacher died 10 years ago, and I haven't got a new one. Maybe I will someday, who knows. Thank you.
Thank you.
I always have something a little weird to add. Sorry.
Yeah, certainly. It's all right.
I don't know where it comes from, but one lady was sharing something with me on this topic, and it was a group in the US, and after I don't know how long, it descended into wife swapping. So yeah. So there's all permutations out there.
I've seen some of those too. Yep.
Was this under the guise of guru relationships?
Yeah.
You mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in extreme cases of that, it could result in a situation like the Jim Jones cult. You know,
Oh, hi, Susan.
hi, Donnie. The people had such utter devotion to him that they, you know, destroyed their own lives.
Yes. I've because I'm actually a skeptical person. I work quite hard on my skepticism. When I say skeptical, skeptical's good, but it can be a bit harsh sometimes to be skeptical. And so part of my skepticism has involved reading quite a bit about cult formations. And I remember when I first met Lama Zopa Rinpoche in 1983 at a retreat in Bendigo, I was so overwhelmed by meeting Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Nothing like this had ever happened in my life before. And I came back to my friends in Melbourne and said with that ecstatic, beatific smile on my face, "This Lama glows." And their faces fell, my friends' faces. They thought to themselves, what has Ross got himself into? And so this is really, really fascinating, isn't it? On that retreat, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, it was at Sandhurst Town, which was a reconstructed gold town, Australian sort of goldfield pioneer town, as sort of set up as a tourist attraction. So it had all the little shops, the bakery and the cobbler and so forth in the street. And there are a number of pens or aviaries with Australian birds in them. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche would come out of the teachings, which took place in this little tiny church, and walk across the road to the aviaries and spend half an hour doing practices for the birds in the cages. And I'd never seen anything like this before. I'd never witnessed kindness like this before. And when we went for a walk along the road to go and have lunch and so forth, all the dogs from everywhere would come and run behind Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And so there'd be Lama Zopa Rinpoche out the front, all the dogs and all the students. And it was just a completely different way of seeing someone. So it was very, very challenging, but it was connected to awe. I was struck with awe meeting Lama Zopa. So I don't want to deny that feeling. That I still have that feeling of awe when I see Lama Zopa. I find him an awesome being. I don't know how to comprehend something like that. It's just absolutely extraordinary to have the opportunity of seeing that. But at the same time, I've gone backwards in my little mind and to make sure that I know what I'm doing. And what came through to me is the quintessential need to establish an ethical basis. Is our teacher ethical? Pure ethics. Is our teacher acting to benefit others and to avoid harming them in the very deepest sense that can acquire? And so that is the bedrock of trust in our teacher, is a comprehension of this ethical foundation. So I just mentioned that. That's where my cynical part comes in, because it would check. It checks to make sure, yes, is this teacher living in the way that they're espousing? So there has to be a unification of deed and thought in our precious teachers. Are there any other comments or personal experiences that people might have that might reflect on the topic?
I hate to come in again, but I'll do it anyway. What was that guy's name up in Oregon? They wore these beads with a red medallion. And what was his name? He had a bunch of Rolls Royces, and they bought up all this property, and then they got busted.
I'm not sure.
OSHA.
That's
Oh,
right. But what was his name
yeah.
before that? Before that.
I forget. With
Yeah, why do I forget? I guess we're getting old or something. But I got dragged along to one of his meetings, and he kicked me out. That's how skeptical I was. I really got bad vibes there. So anyway, that's all.
So I think my point about skepticism is extreme skepticism is a problem, because it causes a burgeoning faith to wither, to desiccate, and not to have a chance to get underway. But so is a kind of unadulterated, naive acceptance. So we have to creatively weave between these two. And so the structures of Guru Yoga, which are so comprehensively given in the lam-rim tradition, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche very vividly points out over and over again, is providing us with a very, very particular way of developing the most profound trust in our teacher in a completely safe and secure way. And so I just mention this because if we're going to ask for the Guru's blessings to enter our heart, as we did in the meditation, we want to have complete confidence that what we're invoking is the most pure and extraordinarily wonderful thing possible to seek to assimilate and to become indistinguishable from. And so, although Priest in his book talks about the dangers of kind of inappropriate projection through a kind of wobbly sense of desperate ego, it's also possible to see that once we do develop a heart trust in a teacher, that by transferring our sort of guidance onto our teacher provides us with an extraordinarily direct catalyst for transformation. And so Lama Zopa Rinpoche is going to make clear in that first chapter over and over again that the Guru's blessings are none other than our own potential for transformation. We think, what is a Guru's blessing? It is this capacity to transform our own mind. And this is enabled by holding the Guru as an object of respect and faith, and through deep devotion, invoking qualities that we don't currently have, but aspire to achieve. And so this structuration, if you like, the psychological mapping that's gone on in the space of that visualization process is a form of profound transformative psychology, because we're invoking our very best potential given our current situation in each moment, and then seeking to enhance it through the powerful lens of our devotion. And so Lama Zopa Rinpoche says that through the power of faith, the Guru's blessings can enter our heart. And this means that we can begin to transform and change. And so I find this an incredibly beautiful and incredibly moving way of talking about blessings. Because we think of, someone out there pouring a blessing into us like a cup of water into a vase. But this is saying something much more particular. It's saying that the blessing is the transformation of our own mind towards virtue. And that ripening is the essence of the Guru smiling upon us, protecting us and looking after us, because it's through that transformation that all positive qualities can evolve and all encrusted negative qualities to do with the afflictions can be dropped away. So the word blessings, firstly, Lama Zopa Rinpoche says on page 3, devotion brings blessings. From Guru devotion, we receive the blessings of the Guru in our heart. And from those blessings, realizations of the path to enlightenment manifest in our mind. Sorry, Susan, oh, you got your hand up.
Oh, Dr. Moore, I have a question about talking about projection of the ego. The power of fame, like
Fame.
if someone, fame, F-A-M-E, if someone is extremely famous, how that can distort our thinking. And I'm thinking of the time I took my daughter to London and we watched a play with Jessica Lange, who was a great, great actress, very famous. And I remember when she came onto the stage, it kind of shocked me. Like I thought, she can't be real. It was like she was a meta-human, above human, which has its own power over your mind. Yet that's some kind of a projection. I don't really understand it.
So I think it's necessary here to look at the difference between a projection and an identification. Because in my own practice, which is clumsy, I do my best, I seek to identify with the qualities of the Guru, to become like them, to become like my Guru is the most wonderful ambition I can muster. And so the more sort of capacities and powers and abilities that I see in my Guru, the more uplifted I am, the more inspired I am to transform. So I think this really points out that the dangers of the self-taught, that if we try to just teach ourselves, nothing is going to jeopardize our ego structure, really. We're just going to keep patching bits onto it, like a bricolage, a kind of bits and pieces. We keep adding to the structure. But our Guru presents such a radically different way of navigating the world, of ordinary appearances, that we give ourselves a scope, I think, to step outside the immediate strangulating confines of our egoic formation and begin to work with energies in entirely new ways that might be beyond the tyranny of neurotic self-structuration, because the Buddhist path isn't, as I mentioned before, really interested in becoming the world's best ego. It's saying, how can I transform myself through the Bodhisattva vehicle into an enlightened being? This is a project way beyond anything that our cultural setting is immediately espousing as an aim. And so, as I mentioned before, we need to still keep in mind what our needs are and to identify clearly what we're doing, and not to get swallowed up by someone's fame because they're famous. But having said that, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, for me, does glow. And that kind of radiance is virtue. And it says in the lam-rim that if a being is virtuous, they will glow. And so I don't think we're dealing here with a metaphysics so much as maybe a scientific fact that people can glow. And so I remember, because I'm an artist, but I was also a lecturer in art. And I was very familiar with the halos depicting, in the saints, particularly in the Middle Ages. And after I met Lama Zopa, I suddenly realized that halos are real. They're not just a metaphorical kind of structure to show that someone's holy. It's kind of a fact that one can have this numinous quality. And so when we visualize the guru in the form of light, radiant light and so forth, not as a sort of solid body as such, we're kind of beginning to invoke these sorts of numinous aspects of self-transformation that go beyond the worldly frameworks of who and what we are. So I don't really want to mention the word mystical, but it does have a kind of mystical dimension, doesn't it? To think about the guru in this sort of way. Anyway, Rinpoche says, Guru devotion brings blessings. Through devotion, we receive the blessings of the Guru in the heart. And from those blessings, realizations of the path to enlightenment manifest in the mind. Our devotion makes it possible to achieve enlightenment, to cease all the faults of our mind, and to complete all the realizations. This then enables us to do perfect work for the numberless other sentient beings, freeing them from the oceans of samsaric sufferings and bringing them to liberation and enlightenment. This is why Guru devotion, this experience of seeing the Guru as a Buddha, is the root of the path to enlightenment. And so Rinpoche gives a very beautiful analogy of the seed. He says, without Guru devotion, the nectar of the Guru's blessings don't enter our mind, and this makes it very difficult to generate realizations. Just as a seed cannot grow without water, our mind cannot develop without blessings. Without blessings, our mind is like a hot desert where nothing grows. No matter how much we meditate on the path, no matter how much we squeeze, nothing will grow. So this is getting back to this idea of this crucial idea of blessings as a transformative ability. And it's this transformative ability that we're requesting be bestowed upon us. And it's this transformative ability that itself constitutes the actual blessing. So in Geshe Doga's commentary to 6th session Guru Yoga, he says, as we'll be doing more elaborate visualizations later in the practice, what we must appreciate here is that while receiving the blessings of the Guru, we are to envisage we are receiving the blessings of the holy enlightened body, speech, and mind. Blessings come from the holy body in the form of white light or nectar and enters us, immediately dispelling all physical defects. All faults and defects are instantly eliminated, and we are endowed with the qualities of the enlightened body. Likewise with speech. Upon receiving the blessings of the holy speech in the form of red light or nectar, all negativities of our speech are purified. We're endowed with all the qualities of enlightened speech. Similarly with the mind. When the blue light or nectar is received, it dispels all defects and negativities, such as negative karmic imprints and mental obscurations, and bestows all enlightened mental qualities. In this way, our body, speech, and mind become one and inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of Vajradhara. This inseparability is what establishes the real blessing in our mind. It indicates that a real blessing is taking place. And so this is the reason why in that meditation we did at the beginning of the session, when we've absorbed the Guru into the heart, we spend some time dwelling in that state, non-conceptually, because this is enabling the sort of expanse of the potential for transformation to open out within our experience. And so in some of the meditations, when we look more deeply into this moment of the meditation, we can perform what we call Mahamudra Meditations, realizing the emptiness of the mind itself and so forth. So it can lead into a whole cascade of very, very profound meditations. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, the Guru's blessings transform our mind from being hard and unsubdued into being soft and subdued. Even from our own experiences, we can tell that what the teachings say about the blessings of the Guru is true and have complete faith in it. So here Rinpoche is asking us to experiment, to explore the technique, and then when we find our mind softening, which then means that we're able to nourish its transformation, our faith in the Guru will be enhanced. And so that will then mean that when we next invoke the Guru's blessings, they'll be experienced more intensely, which will enable a deeper transformation to occur, which means that our faith in the Guru will be even further enhanced. So you can see here that there's an evolution occurring almost organically at the level of the interface of ourselves and the experience of Guru devotion as a transformational technique. So it's useful to map out the advantages of Guru devotion, but it's really necessary to explore the techniques in direct meditation. So Rinpoche asks us to look at evidence in our own practice to show whether or not we do have faith in the Guru. And he says, when we have strong devotion in our heart, this is on page 3 of the text, if we meditate on perfect human rebirth, we feel its preciousness very easily. If we meditate on impermanence and death, we feel the transitory nature of life very strongly and easily. And the same thing happens if we meditate on compassion, emptiness, or any other lam-rim topic. In a state of strong devotion, our mind is also stronger, more subdued. Our delusions arise only with difficulty and are easy to control. So I think this is a marvelous passage, isn't it? So I might just sort of, we're reaching the end of our time, just throw this open again to any general comments or observations that we might have regarding the topic of blessings in particular that I've been presenting.
By all means, unmute yourselves and go ahead.
Thank you, Paola. I think sometimes just my experience of being connected to Tara Institute since the early 80s, I often meet potential students who are desperate to have a Guru relationship but don't quite know how to bring it about. And they kind of panic. Oh dear, I can't, it's not working, I can't find my Guru, I don't know which one's my Guru, and so forth. There's a kind of almost a desperation or a despair. So I think part of the problem here is that they're putting so much emphasis on the object out there, like a kind of divine parent, if you like, that they're not able to see what's happening at the level of their own experience and their own needs. And so I really invite us to spend some time very gently and very quietly engaging in the visualization techniques connected to Guru Yoga, because the intimacy of the relationship with the teacher emerges in the space of the meditation. And so therefore the relationship does evolve and it takes place through that kind of osmosis of practice itself. If we keep objectifying it and sort of searching for the guru in the same way that we search for the ideal car or the ideal house or the ideal partner, we're just going to fall over ourselves again and again. So I might just quote another charming passage by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. He talks about the inadequacies of the self-taught in terms of being a parrot. And Rinpoche says there's a big difference between learning something from a teacher and just reading it in a book. Listening to a teacher has a much greater impact on our mind. Being able to parrot the words written in books doesn't mean that you really understand a subject. Having experiences or realizations of the path depends on receiving the blessings of the guru within our mental continuum. Without a guru, we can't achieve realizations. This is why it's not sufficient to have just intellectual knowledge like that gained from studying with professors in a university. Even if we can recite the whole Tripitaka by heart, even if you know the entire Dharma, if you don't have the Guru's advice, there will be a gap between you and the Dharma you practice. And so on this point, Geshe Potawa famously pointed out that even to learn worldly crafts, things we can understand by seeing them with our eyes, we need a teacher to show us. So how is it possible that we, who have just come from the lower realms and are entering a path where we have never been before, could travel it without a guide? So for next session, let's move on to chapter 2 and chapter 3 of the book. So I do strongly invite you to spend some time with the text, because I'd like it as much discussion to be generated amongst us as possible. So I really want to see my role as a catalyst, if you like, and similar to Paola's host role, really, to sort of help facilitate the discussion. So I'm now going to just refer back to our initial meditation. So at the end of the session, so we've had a session together, we can re-establish the Guru on the crown as we did at the beginning of the session. And make a strong prayer in the form of a dedication. Through the blessings of the Guru, may our mind be transformed into the precious mind of bodhicitta. This is the most remarkable solace for the sufferer, to bring an end to the suffering of others. So dedicate that any benefits of the session go towards the fulfillment of this bodhicitta aspiration. And more particularly, that our relationship with our teachers can be enhanced and unfold in a spontaneous, organic fashion through the power of our devotion, or faith. A faith based on analysis and reason. So thank you very much. And I will post some material. I prepared the Pabonka Rinpoche outline as a sort of separate document. And I also made a synopsis of the Venerable Ailsa Cameron's account of the chapters and their correspondence to the outline. And I can also put in a cross-reference to the Easy Path and to Rob Priest's book, The Wisdom of Imperfection. So these are very valuable resources.
Dr. Moore, will that be done through Venerable Dondra?
I'm not too sure. Who's the
Well, yes,
facilitator?
whatever you send me, I can put on the
All right, thank you.
on the event page.
Yeah. And with these sessions, they're recorded, obviously, they get posted. So they're recorded live at this time. Yeah. Thank you.
I missed the name of that book. One of the books that, yeah, it was on this side. Something in the path.
Oh, The Easy Path.
No, I have that one already.
Oh, yes. It would be the Rob Priest book, I think.
No, it was another one. Maybe I was just imagining it.
I think it's the Pabonka book. Yes.
No,
So
I have two. I even have Liberation in our palms, in our hands.
yeah, there's a couple of
You
editions
living in
of
the
this book.
past?
This is the classic text by Pabonka Rinpoche,
I love that book.
and it's full of pith instructions, very, very psychologically direct and powerful. So as I mentioned, it's really good to read Rinpoche's book in tandem with Pabonka's commentary. Read them together, and to do that in the form of a meditation. And so we have a lam-rim session,
Wait,
and where we actually.
You want us to read what in tandem with Pabonka?
The corresponding section in Rinpoche's account.
But what is that book called?
So where it says why should we look at the why we need a guru, that coincides
that's the name of the book?
No, it's the first chapter of Rinpoche's book, but it's also the first lam-rim presentation topic in Pabonka Rinpoche's lam-rim. So you'll see at a glance, if you spend a little bit of time, that there's a very, very powerful resonance there, because Rinpoche is constantly referring to these root texts as well and combining together in his own teachings. And so it's very beneficial to also have access. And of course, the other book is the great treatise by Lama Tsongkhapa, which is the Great Lam-rim, which also presents guru devotion as the initial subject. And so we can also refer to that as well if we like. Well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, I'm really happy to go with the flow. So if you want to steer the direction of the classes through a particular line of inquiry, certainly come forward with that. And I wanted to make it as meaningful as possible. So that helps me as well. So thank you very much. So it's been a delight to meet everyone again today. I believe it's very hot over there. You've been having bushfires and so forth in New Mexico. We're in the midst of a very bitter, cold spell from the Antarctic. So we're getting icy winds. So it's kind of a completely different world. So new technology is amazing, isn't it? Yeah, we have this time together. So it's a delight. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Moore.